Hi class, and welcome to lesson 12. Before I get into the videos, yes, I have made these all in order, sitting in my hotel room while I was on my work trip. I'm no longer on my work trip anymore. I've probably at this point been home for 2 weeks, but I took advantage of it. You know, you gotta take advantage of that time you get. So I took advantage. I said, you know what, I don't have anything to do at night. I'm just gonna make all my videos. So sorry that there's no change in scenery and I'm still wearing the same shirt. But nonetheless, here we go. Lesson 12. This is it. This is the week that we will be working on our financial book. And I'll get to that in just a minute. So first off, I mentioned in my last video that you want to try and get things done because this week the material does start to get a little bit harder. We're going to be talking about graphing lines and slopes. So you're going to be learning the y equals mx plus b formula. You'll be working with graphing on paper and all that good stuff. There is about 40 minutes of video. I definitely recommend watching all of it. This kind of goes back to this. If there's 2 or 3 lessons in the semester where I always see students struggle the most, it's when we start doing the algebraic equations, kind of in lessons 9, 10, and 11, 9, 10. And then also in lesson 12 when we start talking about slope and graphing lines. It's also just, it's not that it's not doable, it's all doable. And but it's just one of those concepts that students typically have a little bit harder time with. So give yourself some extra time there. Make sure you put in the time to watch those videos by Brother Baird, and that should help you out. Okay, now jumping into the financial book. So the financial book will be due at the end of the week, and this is a biggie. It's worth 40 points. To kind of give you an idea, most of the other projects you've done, like the expense report tracking, and then like last week's graph of your savings account that you did, those were all worth about 20 or 25 points. This is worth 40, so it's substantially, it has a much higher weight on your grade. So you definitely want to make sure you get this turned in by the end of the week. Now with that, there is some guidelines. You don't have to jot these down because they are on the instructions when you go to it, but just some things I want to emphasize. And this comes from teaching this class. This is my like 10th or 11th semester teaching this class, and so I've read I don't know how many different book reports and seen, and so I've kind of got an idea of where, sometimes some best practices to help remind students. The first one is keep your paper to 2 to 3 pages, and that's double spaced. And there's kind of 2 purposes for that, and I'll explain that. The first purpose is if you start getting longer than that, you tend to, what I kind of noticed in my first semester is I didn't really enforce the page thing too much, and I noticed that students that kept it to 2 to 3 pages did a much better job at kind of consolidating their thoughts and really highlighting the points that they wanted to highlight. Students that took longer than that tend to kind of wander, if you would. They basically just start writing everything they learned about and any thought that came to their mind, which is great to do for brainstorming, but when you go to write your final paper, you really want to consolidate that, so that way when you read through your paper, it's got this nice flow. So really work to keep it 2 to 3 pages. In the past, I have even, if it gets too long, I will take off a couple of points for that. And it's to help guide you, help keep your thoughts. This paper doesn't have to be your, master's thesis and tell me everything you learned, right? We really want to just consolidate it down into 5 principles that you learned, and how they relate to the gospel. So the second reason for wanting to really keep it for 2 to 3 pages, and this doesn't have anything to do with you guys, it's more for me. I've got 46 students, I believe, in this class, and so, if you can imagine, if every student wrote 5 or 6 pages, how much longer that would take me to get through than if everyone did 2 to 3 pages. So please, for my sake, keep it 2 to 3 pages. But, if it spills a little over onto the 4th page, that's okay. I'm not going to take off points. But it's when it starts to, as I read the paper, I can tell that, you didn't really consolidate your thoughts, you kind of just wandered. And again, that's 2 to 3 pages of the writing. So you do need to do a title page That doesn't count towards that 2 to 3 pages. And you need to do a bibliography or works cited page, and that doesn't count towards the 2 or 3 pages. Okay, so it's 2 or 3 pages of meat, if you would, and then you've got your cover page, and then you've got your works cited, bibliography, whatever you want to call it, page in the back. So remember that, and it'll go much better. Okay. So the other thing is, when you're writing this, and I mentioned it before, is you will, and this is in the instructions, you will need to identify 5 key concepts, right? And that can be really hard, or it can be really easy, because I'm sure as you've read these books, you've learned a lot. So only identify 5, and then from those 5, you want to talk about 2 things. One, how it relates to the gospel, and is it in agreement with the gospel, or is it contrary? You may have read something in some of your books that you're like, that's not what the prophets and apostles have taught us. That's a great thing. It doesn't have to necessarily agree. It's interesting to kind of see that compare and contrast, right? And then the second thing is that you want to talk about that principle is, how will it help you? What impact will it have on you in your life? Is there something that you're going to change? Is there something you've already changed because you've read this book? So the first part, as you're mapping out your paper, what I would do is, on a piece of paper, write down your 5 key concepts that you want to talk about. And then from there, each key concept should have 2 parts to it. It should have how it relates to the gospel, and if it's in agreement, and what are you doing with this information? Have you changed things? Will you change things? Or are you not going to do anything with it? Those are the things that I want to see in that. And then kind of a last thing, keep it fairly simple. I'm not an English teacher, so I'm not going to mark you up a ton on bad grammar or anything like that. I come from a technical background, obviously. I have an engineering degree. I like teaching math. And so, I weirdly enjoy textbooks, because textbooks are what you consider kind of technical writing, which means it usually doesn't have a lot of fluff to it when you read a textbook, right? It doesn't build a background or anything like that, right? I mean, it just kind of jumps into it and teaches the concepts. Same thing here. Think of this more as kind of a technical paper where you're just kind of going to get into it and teach me some concepts of what, about your book that you read. So hopefully this helps. If you still have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out as always. So have a great week and good luck, and I'll let you get to it. See ya.